Okay, the next view of the face, there's 3 basic views of the face. I'm going to throw in a 4th one at the end here. But the next view of the face is going to be a 2/3 view. It's when we turn our subject's head off axis from camera, but how far do we turn? Let me turn back to Toby here. Let's start setting up and you can kind of follow. And I'll do some what not to do pictures, and then which ones are the true 2/3 views. So this time, Toby, let me bring your head around even more, a little bit more, right about there's a little bit more, teeny bit more. She's tilted her head, Aaron, so you need to bring that light down a bit. Slight smile, there you go, good. So now as we look at the image, we got our perfect 2/3 view. Now the cool thing about a 2/3 view is, well, notice how the inside corner of her eye lines up with the outside tip of her nose. That's when we're hitting a 2/3 view. That's when we know we got it. Let me show you some don'ts with a 2/3 view. Also, Toby, let me have you looking kind of straight ahead here. We could actually take a photograph of her looking straight ahead. It's kind of like the classical, read that old way that we used to do bridal portraits, it seems. You know, and I shouldn't say it that way. You know what, in different parts of the country, bridal portraiture is an extremely important part of, you know, the whole planning and everything. Cincinnati, Ohio, we hardly ever do bridal portraits before the wedding, but you get in Atlanta, North South Carolina, this is a big deal for the photographers down there. So it depends on which part of the country that you're in, as how important or less important some of these bridal portraits are. Now, I take these kinds of bridal portraits on the wedding day, the bride's home, wherever it happens to be. So we're still taking them, but depending on your geography, it may be more or less important depending on which part of the country or the world that you're working your wedding photographs. Anyway, getting back to the 2/3 view. Turn your head just a teeny bit more for me, Toby. Eyes looking straight ahead. So 2/3 view right here, just as we said. And now I want you to turn your head even more, because I'm going to move her out of the 2/3 view. And when I turn her head so much, in fact, let's see how far we can turn your head even more. You can rotate your body even a little bit more, right about there is perfect. Okay, now we don't have a 2/3 view, because now look at the image. See how her far eye is extending out into space. It's no longer framed by the far part of the face. So when we lose the far eye, when it's dangling out in space just a little bit more, no longer framed by the far part of the face, then we've fallen out of our 2/3 view. And that, unfortunately, is not what we want to do. It doesn't flatter the bride very much at all. There's another thing to watch for, too, as we fall out of the 2/3 view. So, Toby, I want you to continue to turn your head even more, right about there. Good. Eyes slightly to the right. There you go, good. Couple more, good. Hang in there 1 second. And now as I look at this image, what we're seeing now is we're actually seeing the tip of the nose approach the cheek line. And you never want to have that nose getting close to the cheek line, and especially never have it cross over the cheek line. If it gets close to the cheek line, you create what I call the Pinocchio effect. It's an optical illusion that actually increases the size of the nose optically to the viewer. And again, if we have the nose completely break the cheek line, continue turning your head even more for me, Toby. A little bit more, right about there. That's great. Now we got the nose breaking the cheek line, and as we look at the image up on screen, you can see it is just not a very flattering photograph. So these last couple images are what a 2/3 view should not be. So let's go back, just to recap, bring your head back around towards me. Turn your head just slightly. A little bit, whole body too, just a little bit more. I like your tilt, perfect. Back to our 2/3 view right here, nice smile. Again, great. Let's take a look at our image, and we're back to our 2/3 view. And again, we have her eyes coming back into camera, which I think, again, is a nice way to flatter our brides when we make the photographs. So let me make one point about the shadows to the highlights in these images. What I've done here in this location is I've increased the shutter speed substantially, actually in about a 250th of a second, taking apertures at 5.6. I'm working with a 24 to 105 millimeter lens on my Canon 40D right here. But the point I want to make is that as we look at the images up on screen, you can see that they're quite contrasty. I've done that on purpose, mainly so you can see the facial views pretty darn well here. So anyway, so what we've got here is, you know, you can see the mask of the face defined by how we're bringing the light in and everything else. But that contrast is not the contrast I would not normally work with our brides and our grooms. And we'll get into the proper contrast here in just a bit. So now let's turn her, you know, while we're in this 2/3 view, let me talk about a modified 2/3 view. This is something that I started doing several years ago. And I'm not going to even have my bride in a 2/3 view. I'm actually going to ease her back out of a 2/3 view just a bit. So let me have your back elbow out just a fraction. There you go. Chin down just a bit, turn back a little bit more. Let me start out with the 2/3 view right here. Okay, outside tip of the nose lined up with the inside corner of the eye, looks good. And now that's our 2/3 view, but now bring your head around ever so slightly, perfect, back just a little bit more, right there. And now right here, notice that the outside tip of the nose isn't lined up with the inside corner of the eye, but I love to set up this image because I always have the subject, I always have my bride bring her eyes back into the camera, and it just makes a really, really pretty view. Notice that now we have all the white on one side of her eye, no white on the right-hand side as we're looking at the image up on screen here. But something else that's happening too, we have a little bit of the white actually coming in under her eyeball as well. What we're doing is concentrating all the white of the eye to her right-hand side, and I know as a photographer that the viewer's eyes are controlled by three main things: light, color, and detail. Well, the lightest part of her face right now happens to be her eyes, and as we, the viewer of the image of beautiful Toby, look at her image, notice that how our eyes are drawn to her eyes because I've made the brightest part of her face the whites of her eyes. It's kind of cool how it works out here. So we've talked about full face view, we've talked about 2/3 view, and I just shown you what probably my favorite view when I'm photographing ladies is this modified 2/3 view.